Welcome back, everyone. No matter where you are, no matter what time it may be, I hope y'all are doing well out there. Tonight's encounters come from across the heartland of America. Quiet back roads of Kentucky, empty quarries of Arkansas, wooded ridges of Michigan, and the railroad lines that cut through Tennessee. Now we all know these are stories that never made any headlines. These are stories whispered between friends, or typed out years later by people who still can't shake what they saw. Some are angry, some are still scared, understandably, and a few are still trying to laugh at this like it's a joke. I want to thank you legends for being here and for listening and continuing to support this channel. And if you've had an encounter of your own and would like to share it right here on the channel, be sure and reach out to me. Send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. My email address will be linked in the description below this video. Lock in, legends. Let's begin. Everyone grab a drink. Lock your doors and windows. Hit the lights. And let's get started. I'm not a fan of typing long things, so I'm not going to horse around with this. I live outside Pikeville, Kentucky. Back in the spring of 2020, when everybody was locked down and the world felt like it stopped, me and my two best friends, C and L, started clearing some new trails on C's family land. We couldn't go anywhere. We were laid off work. So we figured we'd spend some time riding the ATVs and cutting some new paths through the back ridge. Now mind you, this place is some pretty thick woods. It's mostly oak and poplar. And half of it hadn't been touched in years. We'd ride up with gas cans and chainsaws and spend the day sweating, cutting brush, and dragging limbs. It was just something to do, so we didn't go crazy sitting at home. One evening, near the end of April, we were working later than usual. The light was starting to fade, the gray time when the hills swallow the sun before it's dark anywhere else. The three of us were finishing a curve where the trail bends around a small field. I had the shovel, C was on the saw, and L was up on the ridge pulling loose branches. The very first thing that happened was this crash up on the ridge. Loud, heavy, like a tree trunk hitting dirt. Then came another sound a lot closer. A deep popping noise from something stepping hard on dry branches. I looked up, expecting to see a deer run through, but it wasn't running. It was coming down the ridge fast. The brush started thrashing, and whatever it was stopped right at the edge of the field, and we could see it. It was standing upright, tall, lean, covered in dark, wet-looking fur that clumped around the shoulders and neck. The chest was broad. The arms were long enough that it had hands that hung below the waist. The face was stretched forward like a wolf's, but the eyes were set like a person's. It looked at us the way a man looks at something he's about to grab. Then it slammed its hand against a dead tree beside it. The whole trunk split halfway up and fell over like kindling. The sound hit harder than a gunshot. It dropped into a half-crouch, head low, shoulders rolling forward, teeth showing. I swear it looked ready to spring on us. Nobody made any rash, quick movements. We all just looked at each other and we knew. Back up. Don't run. We all started stepping toward the ATVs. The thing growled again, short, sharp, like it came from its chest. When C turned the key and started the four-wheeler, the sound seemed to set it off again. It stomped really hard on the ground one time and threw its head back and made this awful, clipped bark, almost like a warning. We didn't wait to figure out what came next. C gunned it, I jumped on behind him, and Elle took off right after. We hit the main path so fast I nearly fell off the back. When we reached the clearing by the barn, we just sat there for a minute with the engine still running. Nobody wanted to be the first to say it out loud. Finally, Elle spoke up. "What the hell did we just see?" C shook his head and said, "I have no idea. But it's definitely not a bear, which a bear is the only thing that could be that big. Did you see how that thing broke that tree?" Of course, our conversations continued like this for a while. I mean, what are you supposed to think? The biggest predator in this area would be a black bear, and there's just no way. I couldn't stop thinking about what we'd seen. I got on the computer and typed every word I could think of. Upright wolf, Kentucky. Creature walking like a man. Wolf, face. Creature standing up. That's when I found pages talking about Dogman encounters. Most of what I read sounded crazy, but the drawings and descriptions, those were dead on. The more I looked, the more I read, the more I heard, the more I realized how many people had seen the same thing, all across the country. Most of them said it happened in places where new houses or roads were being cut into deep woods. I did make that connection. It made sense to me, and it still does. We were back there tearing up ground and probably ground that hadn't been touched in decades. Maybe it was just defending its space. Now, we stayed out of there. Well, that section of the ridge, anyway. The trail's still unfinished, and I imagine it will never be finished. C keeps saying we should sell the land off before someone else sees what we did. I don't know what good that would do. These things aren't stuck in one holler. If we just keep pushing farther into their woods, people, it's just going to keep pushing them out closer to us. The more we encroach upon their land, the more these things are going to continue to happen. Use common sense, folks. This isn't that big of a mystery. Now, the mystery is what they are, or where they came from, or how they came to be. But as far as the encounters and how frequent, that's not a mystery to me at all. We are encroaching upon their territory. They have nowhere else to go. Just think about it. Anonymous. Reels. What I'm about to share with you happened on my uncle's property just south of Eufaula, Oklahoma, in the spring of 2021. My uncle's place runs about 60 acres, mostly pasture with a few wooded draws that lead down to a pond. That pond's always been kind of a headache. It's spring-fed but fills with silt every few years, and in early 21 he decided to drain it, dig it out deeper, and put in new overflow pipe. He's got a small dozer and told me to come up and help after work. We started draining it through a trench we'd cut into the lowest side. After a few days, the water dropped enough that we could walk the bottom in boots. There was a soft spot near the east bank where water still trickled in a narrow opening. It looked like a washout that had turned into a short tunnel. We figured it was where muskrats or beavers had burrowed in. Late one evening, we were checking that spot when we heard something breathing inside of it. Not bubbles, this weird gasping sound. I yelled in there, thinking maybe a calf had fallen through from the pasture above. The air that came back out smelled like wet clay and iron. Then the breathing stopped. My uncle told me to step back while he shined his flashlight down into the hole. The light hit something slick and dark about 6 or 7 feet back. It looked like wet hide. For a second it moved, just enough to catch a glint of the silhouette. Whatever it was definitely big, and you could see muscle all over this thing. My uncle said, "That's no beaver. Then it started moving forward. The whole hole seemed to exhale. Mud started sliding, water sloshing everywhere. He dropped the light, grabbed my arm, and started screaming, "Back up." When the thing came out, it wasn't crawling. It pushed itself up like it was used to standing. It came halfway out of the tunnel, shoulders and chest first. The head cleared the edge, and that's when I saw the snout, the teeth, the eyes set back and shining a yellow from the flashlight still on the ground. It let out a low rumble. It was deep, and I could feel it in my stomach. It slammed one of its hands against the mud bank, and I don't know if it was trying to pull itself out or warning us, but it sank its claws in and tore a groove almost a foot deep. My uncle fired his pistol into the ground in front of it. The thing jerked back a little and took off into the tunnel. The pond water surged like something big had gone under it. We didn't stick around. We climbed onto the side-by-side and took the long route back to the barn. Neither of us really knew what to say. He finally told me not to mention it to my aunt or the neighbors. The next morning, he said he went back alone. He said the tunnel had collapsed sometime during the night, like something forced its way through from underneath. The water was rising again. He filled the trench with clay and just called it done. I spent that evening on the computer and on my phone. I'm still trying to figure out what kind of animal this is and what could do that and why. The more I'm trying to learn, the more confused I become. There's so many people talking about these walking wolves, especially around this part of Oklahoma. They talk about things seen all over these hills and not to mention all over the world. Every description I hear, most of them anyway, matched what we saw. I'm not saying that thing was for certain a Dogman. All I know is what it wasn't, and it wasn't supposed to be there. We've still got that pond, but nobody fishes it or goes around it anymore. It's just sitting there. Anonymous, Eufaula, Oklahoma. Hey, bud. Just call me T. I was born and raised in Michigan, and I've got a story that still gets me roasted every deer season by my friends. They call me Bigfoot's electrician, which is not nearly as funny to me as it is to them. It was October 2022. I work for an electrical contractor that does line maintenance and storm repair. It's not really exciting, but mostly clearing brush and keeping lines open for consumers' energy. This work is work where you'll get muddy, sunburned, and a bit of mosquito bites. Actually, bit by every mosquito in the state. Anyway, we kept getting trouble reports on a section that runs along an old power line cut behind some hunting land. Every couple weeks, same pole, same line down. No storm damage, no rot, just the whole pole yanked sideways, like something leaned on it or just grabbed it and shifted it. I kept telling my foreman it had to be the soil shifting. He said then quit complaining and fix the dirt. So one afternoon, it's just me and another guy that we'll call R. We were finishing a replacement job out there. It was late. The sun was going down, the air was cooling off. I was already daydreaming about dinner and trying to remember if I had any clean socks left at home. R is up in the bucket, bolting the cross arm, and I'm on the ground rolling some wire. Out of nowhere, he goes, "Man, something's moving down there." I look where he's pointing, and sure enough, there's movement in the brush, maybe 50, 60 yards away, just off the cut. I told him it's probably just a deer to calm down, which is hilarious. because if I'd just shut up, we could have gone home pretending it was. Instead, I had to walk toward it like I knew what I was doing. The grass was pretty high, and you could hear whatever it was moving. I took about 3 steps closer, and this thing stood up. I don't mean it popped up, I mean this thing rose to an extremely ridiculous height. One motion, smooth as a person getting out of a chair, only it just kept going until the top of its head cleared the brush by a few feet. It was shaped like a man, but something else. Its shoulders were broader, its legs were too bent. The head was longer, and the ears looked like a German shepherd's. The eyes were a bronze shine. R yelled something I can't repeat on here, and I won't. He started dropping the bucket before I could even move. I backed away slowly, trying not to trip over the wire roll. The thing stepped out into the open and looked right at us. It grabbed the down line like it wanted to test it out. I swear on my paycheck it gave the pole a shove and the whole thing creaked. That was all I needed to see. I yelled up, "Start the truck." And R started the truck. We left that job site looking like a NASCAR pit stop. We hit pavement, and he said, "You gonna tell the boss?" I said, "No way," because the boss already thinks I'm lazy. He doesn't need to think I'm crazy along with it. Later that night, over a couple beers, we looked up wolves on our phones and did the math. I found a forum about Dogman sightings in Michigan. Now, I'd heard about these things before, but very little. I used to not pay very much attention to any kind of ghost or booger stories. I just about spit my drink when I saw Baldwin listed as a hot spot. That is where this happened, very close. R still debates that it could have been a prank. But I always ask him, have you ever seen a prankster that could move a utility pole? He don't have much to say after that. He's just like me, he's in denial to protect himself mentally. For the record, that line's been solid ever since then. Whatever was knocking it down must have decided we finally took the hint. T. A little bit about me. I live about 15 miles south of Harrison, Arkansas. Back in 2019, I was working for a local rock hauling company. We'd haul gravel out of an old quarry that hadn't been active full-time in years, mostly just when county jobs came up. That place sat deep in the Ozark Hills, surrounded by woods. The pit itself was down a steep drop, maybe 100 feet from the main access road. When you shut off your truck, all you could hear was frogs, wind, and the echo from water dripping off the rock wall. It had a way of making you feel smaller than you wanted to admit. Most nights I ran solo loads, just me, the truck, and the loader operator that we'll call Mike. We'd fill tarp and head out. Nothing to it, really. But one Friday in July, Mike called off sick, and the foreman told me to keep an eye on the site until the backup loader showed up from town. I figured I'd just nap in the cab, why not? I had the engine idling, the windows were cracked. I was trying to cool down when I started noticing something odd. The frogs and crickets all shut up, completely. The only sound left was the truck and the echo from the rocks. I remember looking in the mirror thinking the backup loader must have pulled in behind me, but the road was empty. I heard rocks hitting metal, and not small ones, like someone picked up handfuls of gravel and threw them hard against the dump bed. I killed the truck thinking some kids had wandered down there. I stepped out with a flashlight screaming, "You're gonna get yourselves hurt down here." Nothing. I walked to the back of the truck with the light, shining it on the rock piles. I saw movement on the upper ledge. It was just a flash of something black against the lighter stone. It went down low, then shifted sideways like it was trying to pace me. This thing, I didn't really know what it was or what to think. And it got even worse, because next it stood up straight. Its outline was, well, it had long arms, and I mean too long. It looked almost like something from a cartoon. The shoulders were slumped forward, and when the beam hit its face, its eyes looked like they were lit from below, not from above, like it was leaning down to look at me. I froze up, and it wasn't from fear. It was more like my brain just was struggling to put this thing into a category where it would fit. It dropped down to all fours and came down the ledge faster than anything I've ever seen physically move. I ran for the truck, got in and started it and buried the throttle. In the mirror I could see the light hitting the gravel road. It was upright again. Its chest was heaving, I could see it. It was flashing its teeth like it was snarling, but I didn't hear any sounds. I threw the truck in gear and took off up the road. There was gravel flying everywhere, but I didn't let off until I made it out of there to the highway. The foreman chewed my out the next morning for leaving without the backup loader, but I don't care. I didn't go back there until daylight, and even then, I brought another guy with me, and we were armed. There were all types of drag marks in the gravel along the bottom of the slope, and they were deep ones. It looked to me like it was made by something very strong, very heavy, and had very sharp claws. The guy said it was just runoff from the rain that night, but I know what I saw, damn it. I've been all over these hills all my life. I've had all types of close calls and encounters with dangerous wildlife, but whatever the hell that thing was, it wasn't any of them. Every now and then, when I'm on a late haul and the radio gets quiet, I still start thinking about that night, that thing and what it was, what it wanted, where it came from. I can hear the gravel hitting the metal, the way that thing stood there watching me. If you ever find yourself in a situation like this, staring at one of these things, just leave if you can. The mental damage it does by seeing it is bad enough. I don't even want to imagine what the physical damage would be if it got close enough to grab you. Anonymous. Real adventures. I've only told this story to my wife and to my son. The reason I'm writing it down is because I still can't sleep much, especially when the wind shifts a certain way at night. It's been 10 years, but I can still see it like it was yesterday. My name's Gerald. I'm 67 now. I used to work nights as a track inspector for the railroad down near Livingston, Tennessee. The work involved lots of walking, checking for washouts and loose ties. I'd park my truck near the siding and walk the stretch with a light and my tool bag. Most nights it was peaceful. In early November of 2015, I was covering a section that runs along the edge of the river valley. It's quiet down there. Thick woods, steep drop-offs, and no cell signal to speak of. I remember it was cold enough that the gravel crunched under my boot. The air had that sharp, metallic smell it gets before a frost hits. Around 2:30 in the morning, I was about halfway through my section when I heard what I thought was someone walking behind me. I stopped and turned around, and there was no one there. A few minutes later, the same thing. Crunch, crunch. I finally asked if anyone's there. The faint whistle of the wind was the response I got. I told myself it was my boots, an echo off the cut rock, or it maybe could have been an animal up on the bank. I went back to work, trying not to think about it. No big deal. Then I was hit with this smell. It was very strong, wet, and sour. It smelled like dog fur left in the rain mixed with something metallic. It reminded me of blood. It was so thick I could taste it in my mouth. I lifted the light up and started shining it all around. I was beginning to get nervous. I saw something just past the tracks, maybe 20 yards ahead of me. I immediately could tell that I was in a bad spot. It was something tall. It was standing up, but not a man. It was wide across the chest. The legs were bent backwards like a dog's. It had a bushy tail that went straight down and curved up right before it touched the ground. When it turned its head toward the light, the eyes caught it like polished copper. It started moving along the edge of the trees, walking parallel to me. It was stepping over logs like they were not even there. An animal should not be able to walk like a person, especially that gracefully. It didn't make any noise, except for the crunch of leaves. I started making my way away from this thing, but I kept my eyes on it as I was backing away. When it finally stepped onto the tracks, my brain just melted in my skull. I kept trying to label it as anything else. The arms were too long, the head was extremely broad. The way it moved wasn't natural, it wasn't curious or scared, it was watching me the same way a wolf watches something before it decides what to do with it. I started waving my light, shouting, trying to make myself bigger. I didn't know what else to do, and this thing didn't flinch. Instead, it looked amused. It dropped down low, pressing its hands to the rails. It let out a growl that rattled through the steel like a tuning fork. I felt it in my boots. I don't even remember running back to the truck. 1 minute I was there, facing this down, and the next I was slamming the door and throwing it in reverse. The light rolled across the seat and went out. For a few seconds, the headlights caught it standing in the middle of the tracks. It was just watching me drive away. Then I saw it just step back into the dark. I never mentioned anything to the company. I just said I'd found signs of trespassers and refused to take the section alone again after that. My supervisor didn't try to persuade me otherwise. He said even the locals avoided that stretch after midnight. I found that very curious. I've spent my whole life working outside. I've seen animals, I've dealt with crazy people. I almost got shot one time by someone on drugs, but I never saw anything that could look at a man the way that thing did, like it was deciding whether or not I should end my life there or be allowed to walk away. My life was in the balance, and that thing was the judge, jury, and executioner. If you end up sharing this, and anyone listening now, if you're laughing or doubting, making jokes about what I just typed out, I assure you, I pray that you never experience anything close to what I did. But go ahead. If laughing helps you deal with this and makes it easier for you to sleep at night, then just keep laughing. Gerald R., Livingston, Tennessee. Friends, legends, family, there you have it. 5 encounters from everyday people who never asked to be part of this mystery. I don't think any of us did, really. Maybe they all saw the same kind of creature. Maybe these things move among us more than we would like to admit. Or maybe the answers will always stay buried in the dark places we don't go anymore. If you enjoyed tonight's upload, just take a second to hit that like button. Share this with a friend who is interested in this kind of content. And subscribe, please, if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate it. Those few clicks might not seem like much, but they make a huge difference for the channel and help keep these stories alive. Thank you in advance. Also, a huge thank you to the people who sent in these encounters. They were all equally terrifying, and I truly hope that I narrated them to your liking. Nothing I can do here would do justice to any of these encounters. Truly horrifying experiences. I'm glad all of you made it out safe. Another huge thank you to all of you channel members out there who continue to throw just a little bit of extra help my way. You guys keep the lights on. You keep this thing rolling down the tracks. And for that, I'll forever be grateful. You guys are legends. Thank you. That's gonna do it, y'all. Everyone stay safe out there. And remember, you're not alone. I love each and every one of you. Until next time, my friends. Watch over your loved ones. Keep your head on a swivel. And as always, good night.